Jesus was a rock star.
Been doing a series. We've been asking all of these different why questions. Why? And so today we are looking at why should I trust God? Why should you trust God? I got a question for you. Have you ever felt like life is an ongoing battle? Like no matter what you're doing, you're either in the middle of in this life, you're either going to be in the middle of a difficult time or a difficult fight. You're either coming out of a difficult time or a difficult fight, or you're going into a difficult time or a difficult fight. Because it's just part of life. We all do it all of the time. And so maybe you're here and you're watching me and you're fighting an addiction. Yeah, you're looking to pay some bills. You're fighting to keep your kids on track. Man, little Johnny is doing dumb stuff at school. Maybe you're fighting to keep your marriage together, and your wife has told you that she's leaving. Maybe you've just got crazy people around you and you just need a little bit of help. Maybe today you're the crazy one and you're feeling worn down. You've been fighting depression, you've been fighting discouragement, you've been fighting doubt, and you're like, God, why? Why should I trust you? Because I look around my life and I see that maybe I shouldn't trust you. You ever felt like maybe I can't trust you, God? Like, Lord, if you knew what I was going through, how could you possibly let me go through what I'm going through? If you're the God of the universe, why? If that's you today, you are blessed, because I've got a word for you. It's going to bless your heart. I promise you. Why? Because it's not me. It's kind of just the Bible. Now, Psalm chapter 20, verse 7, it says, "Some nations boast of the chariots and horses, but we boast in the name of the Lord our God." Those nations, they'll fall down. Those ones who boast in chariots and horses, they will collapse. But we will rise up and we will stand firm. So give the victory to our King, O Lord, and answer our cry for help. Pretty bold, right? There's a really great song. I might take it on to the end of this. We'll just see how it goes today and see what kind of mood I'm in. But just in case I don't, I got to sing it for you, okay? Some may trust in horses, some may trust in chariots, but we will trust in the name of our God. And it goes on from there. Bob Fitz did that. I don't know the name of the guy who wrote that, but that's an old song that we used to sing in church, and so it's pretty bold words. You trust in your tanks and your guns, but I got Jesus. All right. Now the same person, and this happens to be David. The same person wrote this in chapter 13. It says, "Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever? How long will you look the other way? How long must I struggle and anguish in my soul with sorrow in my heart every day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand?" Do you feel like you've got an enemy in your life that has the upper hand? Well, that's where David was living this day. He was living right there, because this was when Absalom was rebelling against him. And he was running from Absalom. Absalom kicked him out of his own castle. Absalom was David's son, and it broke David's heart. And so we pick it up a little bit more. Verse 3, "Lord, turn and answer me. Oh, Lord, my God, restore the sparkle to my eyes." Have you lost some sparkle in your eyes? I know what it's like to lose some sparkle in my eyes. "Or I will die. Lord, if you don't help me, I'm sunk. Don't let my enemies gloat, saying, 'We have defeated him.' Don't let him rejoice at my downfall, O God. But I trust in your unfailing love. I will rejoice because you have rescued me. I will sing to the Lord because, God, you are good to me." So I want to ask you today is, should you trust God? Well, I hope that you have a resounding yes coming out of your mouth. But maybe you're going through something and you don't feel like trusting God right now, because there's things going on in your life, and if you were cynical, you would look at that and you would think that maybe God is not trustworthy. Maybe I can't trust him because I thought he'd help, and he did it. So what do you do when you're losing your trust in God? Well, number one, at this point, David, he's saying, "Hey, I'm not sure I can trust God." Now later in chapter 20, David's like, "Hey, with all my heart, I trust you. Some may trust in horses, some may trust in chariots, but I will trust in the name of my God." So David in chapter 13 is like, "Oh Lord, I'm just sunk. I don't know what's going to happen here. We're all defeated. Everybody's kicking my butt, God." And then, but Lord, then in chapter 20, hey, somebody trusts in horses, somebody trusts in chariots. But me, give me my God. So today we're going to talk about how we grow from that, from I'm not sure I can trust God to now I know I can trust God. Get that? Now, maybe, and we all go through it, but there comes a time in your Christian walk, and there comes a time when you're coming to Christ and you're yielding your life over to Christ for the first time, and you're not sure that you can trust Him. Well, I know I can trust Him, and I know you can trust Him. But we want to take you from not being sure if you can trust God to saying, I know that I can trust God. And so that's what we're doing today. So why should I trust God? Well, not trusting God is, sometimes people, they got see this big telescope thing. It seems like God is too far away. So how can you trust in a God that you can't see? Sometimes He doesn't answer your questions so good. But the reality is that God is there. This poor little dude, he's got it smashed up against his telescope, and he said, I can't see anything but God, Jesus is right there. You can completely trust Him. And I'm so grateful that I can trust God. I have this cool little story, and I think about it every once in a while. My grandmother had an encounter with God when I think she was in her 60s. You have to ask my mom for sure. But she lived a wild life. She told me I was pretty young, and she told me some of the wild things that she did. And she said that her dad was a moonshiner. And so she learned to drink early. She said he'd mix a little sugar in it when she was very, very young. And she liked it when he drank because he was so kind when he was drinking, was what my grandma said. And she didn't know God. Now, she would have an encounter with God. And it was my grandmother who told me, Scott, you're called to be an evangelist. And at the time, I thought, oh, that's pretty great. Now, and I am called to be an evangelist because I gravitate towards people far away from God. I am not called to do like a TV evangelist or I'm a biblical evangelist. It's not passing. Anyways, that's putting me right at the beginning. The people are going to get saved because of my life. My grandmother told me that. And but she didn't live for the Lord her whole life. It was kind of later in life that she encountered God. And she told me one time they were on the farm. And of course, this is in the, she was born, I think, in the late 20s, early 30s. And she was on the farm, and they had a lame pig. Okay, they had a lame pig, and the truck could only take so many pigs. And so they were about to go to market or the auction still or wherever they were going. And my grandmother said, I didn't know God. I didn't know anything about God. But I just said, Lord, I need that pig to go. And so my grandma, having very, very little faith at the time, at least according to her, and she begins to pray. She said, I didn't know how to pray anything. So I just started to pray the Lord's Prayer. And so she began to pray, Our Father who art in heaven. And she said that she did that over and over and over again. And as she watched, this lame pig got in front of all of the other pigs and got on the truck and got to go become bacon. So bless God for that. But it meant so much to her because God knew her and He loved her, and He was beginning to build that trust with her. He's to say, hey, I'm just here and I love you and I'm for you. I love you and I'm for you. Now, a couple weeks ago, I was going, and if you come to our church right now, you'll be hearing more about this. And I've been going through some stuff. That's all I'm going to tell you right now. Yeah, but going through some stuff, and then I planned my sermons out 6 months ahead. And, well, even more than that. Sometimes this particular one, I knew I was going to preach on this series like a year ago. Okay, and I put in that I was going to Asaph and Psalm 75. And so anyway, so now I'm plugging along. I knew I was going to preach on that. I had some ideas, but I hadn't looked at it for a long time. So I jump into it, and I'm like, hey, Asaph, how you doing? So I go and I start reading Psalm 45. We go 2 weeks ago. Look at the video from 2 weeks ago. I preached that message, and I have an online version of it. So you can go look at that if you want to. But I'm preparing for it, and God is just kicking my butt. There's a line in there this is actually, I'm going to pause it right here, the video. So we're going to pause. Okay, here it is. Psalm 73, actually. I thought it was 75. I've been telling people it's Psalm 75 for 2 weeks. This is to the God of Israel. But as for me, I almost lost my footing. My feet are slipping. And I look at the wicked. They lead such painless lives. But there's one thing in here I wanted to show you. Did I keep innocent for nothing? I get nothing but trouble all day long. But then it says, when you arise, O Lord, you'll laugh at the enemies. Then I realized my heart was badder. It says in verse 14, I get nothing but trouble all day long, and every morning brings me pain. And I realized that was the most painful time for me. And it was really powerful because it was so I'm preaching my way through this, and I'm getting ready for this message on Sunday, and it's just rocking my world. I mean, I just can't believe how God is just being so faithful, and so then I'm up there preaching, and it's just hitting me so hard, and the gratitude just flooded over me. It was so good. And it was just like, even though going through something kind of difficult, the Lord just kind of pats you on the head, and it's like, hey, I'm right here. I'm right here. Because sometimes I know he's with me all the time, like this poor dude on the screen. I know he's with me all the time, but sometimes the problem isn't him, it's me. He never left me. He was always right there. My ability to perceive him is the only thing that ever changes in our relationship. So how do you go from I'm not sure I can trust God to I know God? 3 things, and I want you to remember those. Number 1, you need question. And that's what David is doing in this psalm, and in both of these psalms. So Asaph in Psalm 73, and David in Psalm 20, and 13 rather. You question, you pray, and then you surrender. You question, you pray, you surrender. So number 1, you got to question God. Is it okay for you to question God? I'm telling you, yes. You have to question God and do it right to him. But you do it with an open heart, knowing that anytime you and him disagree, you're always wrong. But still question him. And David, a man after God's own heart, he questioned God. God, what are you doing here? Why is this happening? Someone said right now, Abraham, Joshua, Herschel said, well, closer to God when we're asking questions than when we think we know all the answers. How's that for a powerful statement? We are closer to God when we're asking him questions and we're saying, God, why? And so we're going to look at this in the story of Jesus. Here, a dad has brought a child to Jesus in chapter 9, and he's like, hey, my son, we'll read it. The Spirit often throws him into the fire or into the water trying to kill him. Lord, have mercy on us and help us if you can. Did you catch that last little 3 words? If you can. He wasn't even sure Jesus could. Lord, have mercy on us and help us if you can. I'm telling you that God would rather that you run to him with your questions than run from him with your doubts. Do you catch that? He knows what's in your heart anyway. You can be honest with him. You can just puke on him. You get all of your insecurities, doubts, and fears. I just want you to lay them at his feet. Just unashamed and just lay them all right there. I would rather you run to him with your questions than run from him with your doubts. So number 1, don't be scared of questioning. All the great ones did, okay? So next, you pray. You pray. You spend time with God. So Jesus gets back at this guy. He says, hey, what do you mean if I can? Really? If I can? Have you been paying attention? If I can, Son of God here, Messiah, gonna be risen from the dead. If I can, Jesus asked. And then Jesus says, hey, anything is possible if a person believes. And then the Father instantly cries out. And see, this is how my conversations go with him sometimes. I will be kind of disrespectful to God. I'm like, God, this is the way you should handle this. This is how you should have blessed me. This is how you could have done things. Lord, all you would have had to do is do this one little thing, and then everything would have gone so right. It would have been so good, God, if you'd just done this one thing I asked you to do. And God, but what do you mean if I? So then God will spank me, okay? Because he's always right. I'm always wrong if we disagree. That's just how it is. Jesus pushes back into the guy. What do you mean if you can? Right? So I encourage you to bleed on the Lord. I encourage you to lay it all at his feet. I encourage you to be honest with him. But don't be surprised if he pushes back. Okay, because he's certainly done that to me many, many, many times in my prayer life. What do you mean if I can? Jesus asks. Anything is possible if a person believes. But here's the part that is really important. And this is what you need to do. This is what I need to do. The Father instantly cried out, hey, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. Isn't that beautiful? It is so honest and so precious. And I'm telling you that a heart that is longing for God, even in the midst of their doubts, is precious to your Jesus. Precious to your Jesus. He says, I want to trust you, but I'm not sure how to trust you. Help me, oh God, to trust you. So how did Jesus respond? Well, he heard the dad's prayer. He heals the guy. The kid gets completely healed. And so Jesus responds to the honesty. He responds to the snarkiness, if you can. Well, it wasn't snarky. I think it was desperate. Lord, if you can. And Jesus is like, if you can. Come on, anything is possible if you believe. But then he doesn't just chew the guy out, because Jesus does get a little snarky with him, right? If I can. But he doesn't leave dad there. No. Dad of this demon-possessed child. Jesus heals him, gives it to him. So, number one, you got a question. Number two, you got to pray. Have that conversation with the Lord. Take your doubts and just shove them right in his face and let him spank you if you need a spanking, a firm talking to, or maybe even bring that quiet peace that just knows everything. Number three, and this is so important. They're all important. I want to say this is the most important one. I don't know. They're all important. But number three, if you don't do it, you don't get it. I mean, if you don't do it, it doesn't happen. If you don't do this one thing, your entire Christian life is screwed up. And that is you got to surrender. 100%, absolutely 100%. You got to say, God, you are God and I am not. You are smart, I am dumb. Lord, your way is perfect. My way is not. Okay? You surrender 100%. Those who trust God, who choose to trust God even when you don't understand. Choose to trust God, especially when you don't understand. You surrender. You lay it right in there. Look at what it says in Proverbs 3:5. It says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and do not depend on your own understanding. We read this last week too. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you the path to take. Oh, I got to unpack a couple of things here. Trust in the Lord. Your understanding is stupid. His is not. If you are reading the Bible and it says not to do something and you're like, yeah, but there's all these great reasons to do it, you're wrong. I'm telling you, I'm so sorry, but you're wrong. You're wrong. You argue with the Bible, you will always be wrong because it is right and you are not. And I disagree with God all the time. I mean, I wish I was even joking with you, but I'm actually not joking with you. He blesses in ways I wish he'd do stuff. Him and I, but you know why it works is because when I realize I'll say this to the Lord, the Lord and I disagree on this. But he's God. I know he's right. I know I'm wrong. I don't know why I'm wrong because I've only got my human understanding to figure it out, right? I don't know why I'm wrong. I just know that I am when I disagree with the Bible. And so I submit. I submit. And then seek his will in all that you do. As you mature, at least this is in my life. I've been a full-time pastor 28 years now. And before that, it's been a long time I've been serving Jesus. And so I don't do it all right, but I'm no rookie either. And I seek his will. Most of my prayer life, I don't ask for stuff that much anymore. I pray for blessing, financial blessing, pray for blessing in my family. I'd be honest with you. If you were to, look over my shoulder in my prayer time, there's not a whole lot of a wish list going on. I'm not saying never, but I mean, I don't. His Bible says to pray him, ask and you'll receive, all that stuff. But do you want to know what most of my prayer life has to do with? What would you have of me, God? I'm going to look in your word. I'm going to try to figure it out. And then after I have done, and this is a totally different sermon, but we should probably do it here sometime. How do you hear God's voice? I actually preached on that a little while ago, I think. How do you hear God's voice? And it's important, but the Bible's number one. If it's in the Bible, you got it covered. It's so easy. You just read it and you do it. The Bible's easy, but there's some stuff that is not so easy. Do you want me to make this decision and this decision? So this is what I do, and it's exactly what this Bible verse says. And this is what I try to do. Seek his will. That means I'm going to fast. I'm going to pray. I'm going to ask the advice of anybody I can think of. I'm going to try to be humble enough to take that advice. And then it says, so if you seek his will in all you do, that means not just a little bit, but a lot. That means that when you find his will, you're going to do it. You're not, no questions asked, and then he will show you the path to take. Do you want to hear a prayer that I've started praying sometimes? And because I've been going through a little bit of a, I don't know, off time or whatever, and I was in pastor's prayer meeting. I said, my prayer life is basically I'm asking God what to do. And if he doesn't give me a word from him, somehow, some way, then I'm just going to make the best decision I possibly can with the information I have and look right at him and say, God, I did the best I could. So this must be what you want, because you could change my mind anytime. You could speak. You could send someone and say something to me. I would listen. And actually, that has happened to me lately. I'm not going to tell the story now, but I had somebody step in my life, and they just brought some clarity and wisdom to what I was going through. And I think my life will never be the same. It's just so good. He's such a wonderful, beautiful God. So seek his will in all that you do, and he will show you the path. And I hang on that verse and say, okay, God, I sought you with everything I know how to do. Okay? I'm trusting you now that this is what you want from me, because this is all I got. This is the best decision I can make, and I step into it. Now, because why? My understanding is unlimited. Your understanding is limited. Get that in your head. Did you ever do something that you knew was such a good idea? I have an expression I like to use. I used it in a conversation right before I had this conversation with you right now. And this little saying I have, it was a really great idea. It just didn't work. Did you ever have a fantastic idea that didn't work? That's most of my ideas, you thought it was so good. Well, God, he doesn't have that problem. He never has a good idea that doesn't work, because he's got the long plan and he knows exactly how to make that thing work. Now here's what comes down. We have to choose to trust even when we don't understand. And if you have not dealt with that yet in your life, I'm telling you, the day is coming, because the Lord is going to purposely put you in a situation where you're going to have to choose to trust him. And if you don't choose to trust him, your spiritual growth is going to stop, because you are going to limit his ability to bless you and sanctify you. Sanctify you is just becoming more like Jesus. When you give your life to Jesus, oh, dear Jesus, forgive me my sins. I don't want to be a sinner anymore. Make me clean. Wash me in your blood. Poof, you are justified. You put on the righteousness of Christ. If you die, you will go to heaven, and God will look at you, and instead of seeing all of your yuck, he's going to see the righteousness of Christ, and you get to be with Jesus forever. So good. Sanctification is you actually sin less, okay? He puts his hands on you and says, Scott, I don't like this, and he begins to change it. Now, if you say, no, thank you, Lord, I'm not saying you go to hell for one of those, but I wouldn't play that game. No. Fear of God, beginning of wisdom. If he puts his hands on you to sanctify you and you politely say, no, thank you, Jesus, I think you've got some serious problems, not only in this life and the next. Bad for you. Don't do that. Choose to trust him completely. Now, Jesus asked, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he did this exact same thing. He said, if it's possible, remove this cup. Not my will, but your will be done. He does that while he's in the garden. He's already told Peter he's going to defeat. He's going to pretend he doesn't know him. He's already told Judas, hey, Judas, you're going to betray me in a little while. He told the rest of them, all of you are going to be gone. To which Peter's like, no, I won't. And Jesus like, no, yeah, you're all going to be gone. And then he brings them to the Garden of Gethsemane. And, of course, Peter, they're all falling asleep. And Jesus gets irritated with him. And Jesus chews them out. And he's in the garden of him. And he prays for us. He says, hey, Lord, I pray for all of those who believe. Isn't that great that when Jesus was in such pain and anguish in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was thinking of you. He was praying for you in the garden. I just love that. And he says, Lord, if it's possible, remove this cup. Please don't make me drink this cup of suffering. But God, not my will, but your will be done. See, trusting God doesn't mean that you get what you want, all right? It means that you know that the God who loves you is working things out for your good, that he's got you in mind, that he loves you and you can trust him. So you're not going to get what you want, you can get what you need, all right? Romans 8:28, it says, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. And this verse, there are some things that are challenging, but Lord, what in the world is working for good for me in this situation? But you know what? His perspective is so different from yours. It's not even close to the same. He has an eternal perspective. Just read the book of Revelation. And, I'm telling you, Christians die all the way through it. I mean, over and over and over again, the martyr's blood is crying out, all of these things. And this verse even works for them. This verse works for the missionary whose family is killed. This verse works, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God, called according to his purpose, because his purpose is not on this planet. This planet is going to burn. We're going to die. You're going to be dust. You might live to be, 70, 80, 90. I'm going to live to be 130 years old, but it's a twinkle in God's eye. It's just a moment in eternity. And all of a sudden, then there I am, and I'm going to be face to face with my God, and it will all be worth it. So how do you know? How do you grow to trust God, a God that you can't see? Well, you question him because he's faithful to answer those questions. He's faithful to put you in your place if you need to be put in your place. He's faithful to put up with you even when you're being ornery. You pray. And you say, God, help me in my unbelief. Help me trust you. I need your help, oh God. And most important at all, I think it is most important because I think it's the hardest to do, is to surrender. To say, Lord, you are God and I am not. And if I don't understand, that does not make you less. It makes me less because you are God. And I love you so much. And here's what I want to leave. This is a cliche. I love cliches. I make up cliches to get a truth slammed in my head very quickly. And so I want to slam this truth in your head here today. And that is this. If it comes from his hand, I want it. It's just as simple as that. If it's painful and it comes from his hand, I want it. When it's good, obviously, I want it. Because he knows better than me. He's smarter than me. And I know he loves me. I know that my God wants me to feel comfortable. He wants me to be blessed. But his perspective is not mine. And so if it comes from his hand, I want it, even when it hurts, even when it's bad. And we all got some bad stuff coming. Remember that first slide that I showed you? So, if you're not, either you are in the middle of a difficult, painful situation right now, or you're about to go into a painful, difficult circumstance in your life, or you are just coming out of a painful, difficult situation in your life. That's the reality of this planet that we live in. I'm unsanctified. I'm not as sanctified as I will be in heaven. In heaven, there'll be no more guilt, no more shame, no more. I won't have to be sanctified anymore because I'll have a new body. This old body will be burned up, passed away, and I get to be with my Jesus face to face, and I get to know him. I get to know him and love him forever. By the way, that QR code at the top there, if you want to look at any of those notes or any Bible verses or anything like that they are there for you. But the Lord richly bless you. I am so grateful that you took this time. And I'm going to pray for you right now. And I'm going to pray for you that you would trust God with all of these things. So, dear God, I thank you that you are good and faithful. You are good and faithful in my life. You're good and faithful in the life of the people that I am ministering to. And I know, God, that sometimes it's hard to see your hand, but I know that it's always there. So, God, I pray that you would help me, oh God, to ask you good questions. And Lord, when I am feeling insecure, when I'm feeling broken, when I'm wondering, God, don't you see me? Don't you see me, God? It hurts so bad. Lord, I just pray, God, that I would be bold enough to lay those questions at your feet. And God, and then, Lord, when I lay those questions at your feet, we're going to pray. And I'm going to pray, oh God, would you help me in my unbelief? Jesus, thank you for being so tender with that dad, that you were a little snarky with him to let him know, hey, you really need to have faith. But then he just heals the son. Oh, Lord, I love the rich young ruler when he says, hey, would you help me in my unbelief? God, thank you for being so patient with that prayer. Help us with our unbelief, oh God. And Lord, I thank you that I can just surrender myself to you and you just take care of the rest. Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. Lord, that's what you said in Matthew 6:33, that if I just seek you, everything else takes care of itself. Oh man, if I just seek you, God, everything else just is right there, because if it comes from your hand, I want it. I want you, oh God. So have your place in my life. It's all on the throne, all the way up. I submit completely to you today, God, and I give you my life, and I thank you for being a God that I can trust. In Jesus' name, amen. May the Lord richly bless you. Hope to see you in church on Sunday.
Jesus was a rock star.